There's this pervasive narrative in biology that life is essentially this relentless singular drive to reproduce.
Right. It's all about the selfish gene.
The selfish gene, survival of the fittest, pass on the DNA, keep the lineage going at all costs. That's what we're taught.
That is the standard Darwinian directive, yeah. If you aren't reproducing, evolution usually doesn't have much use for you.
But then you look at human females,
Mm.
and you hit this massive, just confusing biological wall.
Mm.
Halfway through a potential lifespan, the reproductive machinery it stops. It shuts down. And logically, that makes zero sense.
It's a genuine biological paradox. I mean, if the game is he who dies with the most offspring wins, then bowing out at age 50 seems like a terrible strategy.
Unless, and this is what we're digging into today,
Sure.
stopping isn't a forfeit.
It's a power move.
It's a power move. It completely changes the game.
It really does.
So let's unpack this. Today we are going on a deep dive into the biological mystery of menopause. We're going to look at why humans are members of this very weird, exclusive evolutionary club.
And we're going to decode the hormonal roller coaster that actually happens, because it is so much more complex than just, running out of eggs.
And we're going to get into the biopsychosocial side of
Yeah.
things. Basically, why does a woman in the Yucatan experience this completely differently than a woman in New York?
And we have a pretty heavy stack of sources today. We're pulling from evolutionary biology journals, some really fascinating anthropological studies from Japan and Mexico, medical journals on neurology, and the latest 2025 guidelines on hormone therapy.
So let's start with that exclusive club. Because when I was going through the notes, I was genuinely shocked. I think most people just assume all mammals eventually stop having babies if they get old enough.
Right, like your dog or cat just retires eventually.
Exactly. But that's not true at all, is it?
Not at all. In the vast majority of the animal kingdom, females reproduce pretty much until they die. Our closest relatives, chimpanzees, they reproduce until the end.
So a chimp is fertile for his whole life.
If a female chimp is alive, she's likely cycling. Elephants are the same. An elephant can live to be 60, and she's likely having calves in her 50s.
So who is in this club with us? Who actually stops?
It is a very short and very maritime list.
Maritime.
Yeah. We're joined by toothed whales, specifically belugas, narwhals, false killer whales, short-finned pilot whales, and orcas.
We're hanging out with narwhals and killer whales, and that's it.
That's the cohort. Humans and these specific whales are basically the only species that routinely live for decades after their reproductive organs have retired.
Okay, so this brings us to the why. Because nature doesn't just do things for fun. It's usually ruthless about efficiency. This leads us to the grandmother hypothesis.
Right, and I know it sounds like a cozy children's book title, but the evolutionary math behind it is actually pretty cutthroat.
It's about caloric economics, isn't it?
It is. The theory suggests that in highly social groups like humans and those whales' natural selection favored females who stopped reproducing because our babies are just incredibly resource intensive.
Right, they're helpless for years. They need huge amounts of food and protection to grow those big brains of ours.
Precisely. So think about the trade-off. As a woman gets into her late 40s or 50s, the risk of pregnancy complications just skyrockets.
She might die in childbirth.
And if she dies, her existing dependent children are less likely to survive. So the strategy shifts.
Instead of investing energy in new, risky offspring, she invests that energy in ensuring the survival of her existing genetic line.
Her grandchildren. But there's another layer to this that I found really compelling in the literature. It's called the reproductive conflict hypothesis.
Oh, this is the part about intergenerational competition. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yes. The models show that if a mother and her daughter are having babies at the same time in the same social group,
They're competing.
they're competing for the same finite resources. For food, for protection, for time. And the data suggests that when that happens, the offspring suffer. Survival rates drop for everyone.
So the evolutionary solution was the older female just bows out.
She eliminates the competition. She becomes a force multiplier. By gathering food, providing childcare, passing on knowledge, she ensures her grandchildren survive.
And since she shares 25% of her genes with those grandkids, it's a safer bet for her genetic legacy than trying for one more high-risk pregnancy of her own.
Exactly.
It's such a powerful reframe. It isn't retirement or obsolescence. It's a promotion to executive management.
That's a great way to put it. You stop working the factory floor and start running the logistics.
And you said we see this in the whales, too.
We do. The post-reproductive female orcas are the ones leading the pods to the salmon runs. They hold the ecological knowledge. If that grandmother orca dies, the mortality risk for her grandcalves shoots up significantly.
That is just fascinating. So biologically, we were designed to have this second act, but the transition into that act,
Mm,
that's where things get messy.
mm.
Let's talk about the mechanism, because the common understanding is just estrogen goes down, period stops, end of story.
That's the headline, but the fine print is where all the symptoms live. And we need to clarify the timeline first because the terminology gets, well, it gets butchered constantly.
Right. People use menopause as this blanket term for the whole ordeal, but medically, that's wrong.
Completely wrong. Medically, menopause is a single point in time. It's defined retrospectively. You have officially reached menopause exactly 12 months after your last menstrual period.
That's it, the finish line.
That is the finish line.
So all the hot flashes, the mood swings, the irregular cycles, everything leading up to that 1-year mark, that is all perimenopause.
Correct. And perimenopause is the turbulent transition. It can last anywhere from 4 to 8 years, sometimes even longer. And this part is crucial. It is not a steady decline.
This was the biggest takeaway for me on the biology side. I pictured a gas tank slowly emptying until the car stops.
And it's not like that at all.
No. The charts look more like a stock market crash.
It's a chaotic system. Basically, you've got a feedback loop between your brain and your ovaries. The brain releases FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone. That's the signal telling the ovaries, hey, wake up, make an egg.
But the ovaries are getting older. They're running out of their reserve of oocytes, their eggs, so they don't respond as well.
Exactly. So the brain just shouts louder. It pumps out more FSH. And sometimes the ovaries suddenly wake up and respond aggressively.
So you can actually have estrogen levels spike higher than normal.
20 to 30% higher than normal during parts of perimenopause. So you're not just dealing with low estrogen, you're dealing with estrogen dominance, then a crash, then a spike, then another crash.
And it's that volatility, the rate of change, that triggers the symptoms.
That's what messes with the brain's thermostat.
Which brings us to vasomotor symptoms. That's the fancy term for hot flashes and night sweats.
Which sound trivial until you are waking up 4 times a night soaked in sweat. I mean, the sleep disruption alone causes a cascade of other health issues.
But let's look at the brain, because brain fog is something women have complained about for decades. And for a long time, they were told it was just stress or, all in their heads. But the new neuroimaging studies, they validate this, don't they?
They do. Estrogen is a neurosteroid. It regulates glucose metabolism in the brain, basically how the brain gets its fuel.
Okay.
So when those estrogen levels fluctuate wildly, the brain literally struggles to access energy efficiently, especially in the hippocampus. We see measurable, though usually temporary, decreases in verbal memory and processing speed.
That is incredibly validating, but also terrifying
Hmm.
to think my brain is starving for energy.
The good news is the brain is plastic. It almost always recalibrates once you hit postmenopause and the hormones finally stabilize. But during that transition, the cognitive struggle is very, very real.
And then there's the physical toll that isn't just about comfort, the stuff you don't feel until it's too late. I was looking at the bone density stats, and it's a cliff.
That is the most critical part for long-term longevity. Estrogen is vital for bone remodeling. When it drops, we lose bone mass most rapidly in the year before and the 2 years after the final period.
So you're talking about a rapid onset of osteoporosis risk.
A very rapid onset. And at the same time, we lose the cardiovascular protection that estrogen provides.
So before menopause, women have a lower risk of heart disease than men.
Yes. But about 10 years after menopause onset, that advantage is gone. The risk catches up.
So this isn't just about getting through the hot flashes. This is a foundational health pivot point. The body is changing its whole operating system.
It is, and acknowledging that risk is really the key to managing the second half of life.
Okay, so that is the biological hardware. It's universal, it's unavoidable.
Mm-hmm.
But, and here's where it gets so interesting, is the experience universal?
No.
Do all women everywhere feel like they're falling apart?
Absolutely not. And this is where we have to bring in the biopsychosocial model.
Which is a fancy way of saying biology is real, but culture messes with it.
Precisely. The cross-cultural studies are just staggering. Let's look at the Maya women in the Yucatan. Researchers found that many of them report absolutely no distressing symptoms.
Nothing. No hot flashes. How is that biologically possible? They have the same estrogen drop, right?
They do. The biology is the same,
Yep.
but the context is completely different. For Mayan women, menopause is viewed as a liberation
Liberation from what?
From the risks of constant childbearing. They gain status in the community as elders. It's a positive, or at least a neutral, event. They don't have a cultural narrative of loss or decay hanging over them.
So because they aren't anticipating suffering, they just experience it differently.
Radically differently. Or take Japan. This is a classic case study. There's a Japanese term, kinenki, which roughly maps to the menopausal transition. But historically, Japanese women didn't report hot flashes.
So what do they report?
Stiff shoulders.
And chilliness.
Chilliness. That is the literal opposite of a hot flash.
Right. It just shows how somatic symptoms, how the body expresses stress and change, are filtered through a cultural lens. So in the West, we have this view of it as a hormone deficiency disease. Japan historically saw it as stiffness, and the Maya see it as freedom.
And that framing matters so much. In the West, particularly the US, we frame it as deterioration. And we see the impact of that not just in health, but in the economy.
The workplace impact.
Yeah.
I saw that 2023 study from the Mayo Clinic.
Yes. They estimated that the U.S. loses about $1.8 billion annually.
Billion with a B.
Billion with the B, due to missed workdays related to menopause symptoms. It's a massive productivity loss.
And it's driven by the severity of symptoms, but also the stigma, the fear of being seen as old or emotional in a meeting.
Which releases cortisol, which can actually make the hot flash worse. It's a vicious cycle.
But speaking of stigma, that is starting to shift, isn't it? The sources mentioned some high-profile figures in the UK who have really cracked this open.
Yeah, Lorraine Kelly and Davina McCall, their documentaries and public advocacy really normalized the conversation. We saw a measurable spike in women seeking treatment after those campaigns aired.
It moved it from a private shame to a public health issue.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the big question. What do we do about it? If you're in the thick of it, the hot flashes, the brain fog, the sleep disruption, what actually works?
Okay, let's start with the gold standard. Menopausal hormone therapy, or MHT.
We used to call it HRT, hormone replacement therapy.
We did. MHT is, without a doubt, the most effective treatment for those vasomotor symptoms like hot flashes. It also prevents bone loss.
But I feel like there's a big but coming. Because everyone remembers the scare from 20 years ago. The headlines were everywhere. Hormones cause cancer.
That was the Women's Health Initiative study, the WHI, from 2002. And it was. It was a PR disaster that set women's health back 20 years.
So what did they get wrong? Or what was the misunderstanding?
The study wasn't wrong, but the interpretation was flawed. They gave hormones to women who were already well past menopause. The average age in the study was 63.
Okay, so they already had underlying silent heart disease, some of them.
Many of them. But that's not who usually seeks treatment. Usually it's a 51-year-old having hot flashes now.
Right. And for that group.
When you reanalyze the data for that younger group, women under 60, or within 10 years of their final period, the picture flips. This is the window of opportunity. For healthy women in that window, the benefits generally outweigh the risks.
So it's not the villain it was made out to be.
For the right candidate, no. Of course, it's not for everyone. If you have a history of breast cancer or blood clots, it's usually off the table. But it shouldn't be dismissed out of fear based on old data.
Okay, so what if I can't take hormones, or I just really don't want to? What are the options then?
We have effective non-hormonal options now. SSRIs and SNRIs, which are typically antidepressants, have been shown to help with hot flashes, whether you're depressed or not. There's also gabapentin.
And there's a new class of drugs, right? I read about fezolinetant.
Yes, it's a game changer. It acts directly on the temperature control center in the hypothalamus. It's like a mute button for the brain's thermostat.
That sounds incredibly promising. Now, I have to ask about the natural aisle. Because I walk into the pharmacy and there are just shelves of supplements. Black cohosh, soy isoflavones, primrose oil. Do any of them actually work?
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if we look at the high-quality, placebo-controlled trials, the evidence just isn't there.
None of it. For black cohosh, for soy.
When tested against a placebo, they generally don't perform any better.
But here's the catch. The placebo effect in menopause trials is huge, isn't it?
It is massive. In some studies, the placebo group reports a 40 to 50% reduction in hot flashes.
50%? That is wild.
It just proves how powerful the brain-body connection is. If you take a pill and you believe you're doing something to help yourself, your stress drops and your symptoms improve. So physically, it's likely not the herb doing the heavy lifting.
What about lifestyle things, like yoga or acupuncture?
The data says they don't statistically reduce the frequency of hot flashes, however. They significantly improve quality of life scores. They reduce the bother factor.
So you might still flash, but it ruins your day less.
Exactly, because your baseline stress is lower.
And there was one lifestyle factor that did have hard data behind it.
Weight loss. Adipose tissue fat acts as an insulator and messes with hormone regulation. A high BMI is a known risk factor for more severe hot flashes. So maintaining a healthy weight makes a real biological difference.
So let's bring this deep dive in for a landing. We've covered the biology, the evolution, the culture. What's the final takeaway?
I think the synthesis is that menopause is a design feature, not a flaw. It's a complex transition, but it also marks a potential for liberation.
It goes back to the whales for me, to
Yep.
the grandmother orca.
The leader of the pod.
Yes. The idea that these female whales stop reproducing so they can lead the group to food because they have decades of knowledge. They're the insurance policy for the whole group.
It really challenges the narrative we have in human society. We often treat postmenopausal women as if they've become invisible or less valuable.
But biology and the whales are telling us the exact opposite.
They are.
The narrative we're sold is, you're drying up.
Yeah.
The biological reality is, you're leveling up.
The very existence of menopause suggests that for a species to thrive, it needs females who are not tied down by pregnancy and nursing. It needs elders. It needs leaders.
That's not the end of usefulness.
Evolutionarily speaking, it's the beginning of a different kind of essential value.
I love that. So next time you have a hot flash, just remember, you're just powering up your inner orca leadership skills.
I'm not sure the biology supports that specific interpretation of the heat, but I definitely like the sentiment.
I'm taking it. So for everyone listening, go explore this. Look at the orcas, look at the Maya, and rethink the timeline. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Go ahead, grandmother evolution says she's important.